Bonjour, Kinamagi Nene Ireland Indigenous, and welcome to this episode of Social Studies Television. Today's lesson, Social Studies Columbian Exchange Review. Begin here by looking at Earth. And during this chapter, we have seen that events are going to connect the indigenous people of Turtle Island, North America, Africans, particularly in the West African regions that we've studied, such as Mali, Songhai, and Ghana, and the European powers that had begun exploration of the planet, looking for new routes to get goods from all the way over here in Asia. Things like peppercorn and silk were becoming very fashionable and popular in Europe. And it was very, very, very dangerous and expensive to travel all the way across from here through the deserts and mountains and past checkpoints and tax collectors and robbers to get over to this west coast or east coast here. So Europeans start looking for other routes. Originally, they start going around Africa. And once you get down to this part, it's not very easy to sail. It's very tumultuous waters, rather dangerous, even if you're sticking to the coast. So they start thinking about going to the east. Going to go east, they want to go west. And we knew that as Europeans that there were lands over to the west. The Vikings were here around 1000 AD. Fishermen had been off the coast for hundreds of years. But in 1492, at the end of the Reconquista in Spain, they start accepting the idea of spending money to pay for explorations. And one of those people is Christopher Columbus, an Italian who had been begging the King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to pay for his trip. And eventually they do. And that's going to set off something that will change the history of the world. And while Columbus is likely given out an outsized amount of credit as discovering the Americas when there were 100 million people here and many Europeans already knew there were lands over here. One thing that is true is after his voyage, Europeans start coming this way much, much more frequently, which is going to lead to catastrophic events in the New World. Part of what's going on here is they realize, hey, they've got some cool things that we want. So they're going to start trading. And we'll talk about those goods in a moment. In fact, let's go to those goods right now. Scroll up here. So some things from the Americas, potatoes, corn. Yeah, when you think potatoes, you think countries in Europe. It's a New World product. Corn, squash, tomatoes, pumpkins, peanuts, cocoa, pineapples, llamas, alpacas, turkeys, hammocks, all from us in the New World. At the same time, things like wheat and oats, rice, peas, bananas, coffee, sugarcane, horses, cattle, pigs, sheep, guns, metal objects, and diseases are going from the old world, which is Europe, to here. Those diseases are going to have a very, very, very bad impact on our indigenous people. As it turns out, when you expose people to diseases they've never been around, they're much more likely to catch it and have severe cases. Diseases like smallpox is going to kill untold numbers of indigenous people throughout not just this region, but going into the mainland North America. And Europeans get to the point where they realize this and start using it as biological warfare. Yes, there were probably some diseases that go from the Americas to Europe, but it has a much more drastic impact over here. We also see the institution of slavery beginning. As on one of Columbus's voyages, he began by just taking a half dozen or so hostages and sending them over here, but soon it's numbering in the hundreds and thousands of indigenous people enslaved and brought back over to Europe. It is fair to say that at this point, the Europeans look at themselves as being on a much higher level than the indigenous people of North and South America and the Africans of Africa. They believe as based on religious and cultural values that they are four rungs ahead. There's a quick desire to convert people in both Africa and the Americas to Christianity, and also to collect a large amount of gold. This does open up for Europe a number of new products and increased wealth that is going to start to spread down in their social system. So they're getting new items. That's one of the impacts. The countries are getting control of larger areas and those resources that come with it. So that's one impact on the Europeans. Eventually, they realize that as colonies are formed here in the Americas, that there weren't enough people, since there's so many killed off by disease and gratuitous violence, that Europeans start bringing slaves from West Africa, which is going to have a devastating impact on family life and cultures here, as so many are literally kidnapped and sold and shipped over here, never to return. So the impact on Africa is that you could write something along the lines of families lose people, they lose a lot of people. The more dramatic impact is going to obviously be here on our indigenous population, which has a huge percentage killed. This was a region that had hundreds of millions of people. And suddenly, in some places, 85, 90% or more are killed in certain areas. Violence, war, disease. Spanish and their governors do not treat indigenous people with respect. There's some readings by a man named Bartolome de las Casas that as you get older, you may want to look into, although I'm not going to cite him here for this test. It's disturbing, is the nicest word I can use, as he describes how Spanish government treated indigenous people. Terrible is not even a beginning word here. So that's going to be the impact on the indigenous people. Let's stop our share here. So that kind of wraps up this first review of the Spanish and Columbian exchange. There is more to it that we'll be covering as far as those interactions that had such a profound impact on all of our cultures, and particularly the indigenous cultures of Turtle Island and South America. So we'll be covering a little bit more in upcoming lessons, but for this assessment, really want to make sure you know what the impact was on Africans, on Europeans, and also on your indigenous people. You'll also want to be able to state that the Columbian exchange was the exchange of goods, people, and disease throughout Europe, Africa, and the Americas. And you'll also want to be able to repeat from the text some of the items that made this all possible from the European perspective. Items like the astrolabe, the compass, new maps, and political changes in Europe that allowed for those governments to spend lots of money on these. If you have any questions, please reach out to me before the assessment. This assessment is on a Wednesday, so it'll be important that you do it on Wednesday. I'll remind you during our 5 is live, but it should be done by that day. So that gives you a chance to receive some feedback from me and get another shot at it before the quarter ends on Friday. So office hours again are at 2 p.m. My email address is mireland@sagchipschool.net. And I hope you all have a good. P.